Tonight, reaction as the feds face criticism over an immigration policy aimed at slowing the number of refugees arriving. Also, the provincial government is making changes to the Saskatchewan Employment Act. Plus, descendants of elders who made Plains Cree language recordings are working to translate them.
This is CBC Saskatchewan News.
It is Thursday, December the 5th, and the CBC Saskatchewan News starts right now. Good evening and thank you for watching. Ottawa is facing criticism over an immigration policy aimed at slowing refugee arrival numbers, specifically pausing a large portion of refugee applications involving private sponsorships. Alexander Silberman explains.
This is north of Saskatchewan.
At their apartment in Saskatoon, siblings Camila and Ali Jamili are settling into their new life in Canada.
And here, me with my brother.
The two fled Afghanistan 3 years ago after the Taliban returned to power, eventually arriving in Canada as privately sponsored refugees, but forced to leave their parents, sister, and two brothers behind.
It was so hard, and then it happened so quick, and I hadn't time to say goodbye to my youngest brother.
The Jamilis now fear the wait to bring their family to safety could be delayed even longer. Last week, Canada announced a pause on private refugee sponsorship applications until 2026, a change impacting community organizations and groups of 5 or more people.
Hi, how are you doing? Good. Welcome in, me too.
Kate Harriet is part of the group working to privately sponsor the Jamili family. She's helped raise more than $33,000 and says the announcement came as a shock.
My heart just dropped out of my chest because I immediately thought about the family waiting to hear from us in Pakistan.
The federal government says the decision is in response to a backlog of applications and part of an overall decrease in immigration. Last year, 27,000 privately sponsored refugees came to Canada, out of about 500,000 total newcomers.
This is really the best way that our refugee system can work, because not people are coming into the warm embrace of a community that has already committed to the government that they are going to support them.
The Jamilis are not sure yet what the changes mean for their family's application.
That was our hope, and I am asking to then don't take this hope from us.
The sponsorship group is aiming for a spot through the Mennonite Central Committee, one of many groups that have agreements with Ottawa, hoping to help the family find safety in Canada, despite dwindling opportunities. Alexander Silberman, CBC News, Regina.
2 bills introduced this week have passed in the Saskatchewan legislature with the support of the opposition. The Saskatchewan Affordability Act includes income tax changes and other commitments made during the election campaign and throne speech. The government says the changes will save the average family of 4 about $3,400 over 4 years. The bill raises personal income tax exemptions and will index taxes to match inflation. The government also introduced and passed amendments to keep the carbon tax off of home heating for 2025. Opposition leader Carla Beck explains why the NDP supported it.
That is something that we heard on the doorstep. People understand the need for debate in the legislature. People understand, the role of government and opposition. But when there's something on the table, when there's a fix or something that stands to benefit Saskatchewan people, they expect the members of this legislature to work together and deliver that.
While the government and opposition agree on the 2 bills, the government did not agree with the NDP's motions to suspend the fuel tax and remove PST from certain items in the grocery store. The province is changing its Safer Communities and Neighbourhoods, or SCAN Act. The act triggers investigations into derelict properties or illegal activity based on complaints. These are the types of properties the province wants to see fixed. The changes will allow SCAN officers to target nuisance properties, whether or not a complaint was filed. A nuisance property could mean unsafe living conditions, squatters, or excess vandalism.
It doesn't need to be occupied at all. It could pose a risk to the community, and we don't want people occupying unsafe properties, and that's why we've increased the authority of the scan officers to step in and not wait until the problem escalates before they're engaged.
Even with the changes, scan officers still need a court order to deal with problem properties, and a public complaint is still needed to trigger an investigation into illegal activity on private property. Changes are coming to the Saskatchewan Employment Act, and one of the changes could make a big difference for people who work in the service industry. Jeffrey Tramp has the details.
The government says it's changing labor and employment rules to cut red tape for employers and provide support for employees. Some of the notable changes include prohibiting employers from withholding tips from their employees, limiting when employers can request sick notes, and extending leave provision to include sick leave, maternity leave, interpersonal violence leave, and bereavement leave. The government says the changes are also meant to modernize systems on a continual basis.
Our legislation requires us to look at every part of the act every 5 years. And so because there's so many parts, it's a large piece of legislation. We're always in the process of reviewing different elements of the act. And so this is, again, part of that regular review to make sure that the legislation remains modern.
The Saskatchewan Federation of Labor says it asked for employment standards to be reviewed last year. President Lori Jobe says she was pleasantly surprised that some of the group's demands were heard.
I think there's a few things that are good. I really will say that, and I'm very glad to see it. There's other things. Making things easier for employers often has the opposite effect on working people, so I'd need to look at that a little bit closer. But
one of the biggest changes Jobe noticed was the changes to tipping. For years, tips were not governed by any laws in Saskatchewan. Jobe says it was deplorable that employers would take away the tips of working people, and she's glad that has now changed.
When they're going to work and having their employer take their tips, there's really something wrong with that. So that is a good step in the right direction. We want to make sure that people that are working and doing the work for, in service or working for these employers, the employers keep their hands off their tips.
Jobe says she's hoping for more amendments in the future, including a higher minimum wage. Jeffrey Tram, CBC News, Regina.
A new report says food prices in Canada are likely to rise next year. The study by 4 universities is forecasting an increase of 3 to 5%. Anis Hadari looks at what's behind it.
Grocery shopping is still getting more expensive.
Families really have a hard time cooking now in an affordable way.
You just learn how to buy things in the large quantity when they go on sale.
I kind of have to pay it. I have a family of 4.
And that family of 4 could pay up to $800 more to eat next year. That's according to the latest food price report from several Canadian universities. Overall, food prices are estimated to go up by 3 to 5% in 2025. Beef tops the list, projected to go up by 4 to 6%. Vegetables close behind, up to 5% more expensive.
We're a little bit unpleased with it being $149.
This produce wholesaler in Calgary says his customers notice rising prices.
It's part of the business, right? So stuff we used to sell for $5 10 years ago is now $10, and stuff we used to sell for $1.99 is now $3.99 or $2.99. Things naturally are going up. Everybody understands it.
The food report's own data also shows last year wasn't as bad as some expected.
Cyclical right now. In fact, a lot of people didn't feel it, but in 2024 was actually a bit of a break year compared to the last few years.
That may not continue, especially for veggies.
And that's due to climate change. It's due to currency fluctuations, and that's the one thing we're expecting in 2025. A weaker dollar is likely going to impact our grocers' buying power.
But even with the projected jump in prices, this wholesaler thinks it'll be okay.
3 to 5%, again, we can live with that too. That's actually it's positive news that it's not jumping up 10, 15, 20% like it was before.
Small potatoes compared to years past. Anis Hadari, CBC News, Calgary.
That same report shows prices in our province rose by 2.8% this year and will likely rise again next year, though below the national average. A University of Saskatchewan professor is one of the authors on that report, and he says while climate change and the declining Canadian dollar are impacting food prices, we're in a better position than many other provinces.
provincial level, then where Saskatchewan sees a bit of a benefit is because so much of what we're importing, particularly comes from Asian countries, right? So it's coming into Vancouver and then it gets thrown on a rail. So the fact that Western Canada food price increases are predicted to be slightly lower for all of the Western provinces than they are for Quebec and the Maritimes. And that's really just due to the geographical situation of having to rail things further to get them to those markets.
Smythe says a lack of rain in Western Canada has also been a challenge for ranchers. Many have been forced to reduce their herd, lowering the beef supply. There is nothing like the joy of a toboggan hill, and these grade 5 and 6 students from Prairie Sky School took full advantage of nicer weather today to get some rounds on a hill in Regina. If you and your kids have not gone yet, this weekend might be the perfect chance. Riley Lachek will have your forecast after the break. Stay with us. Welcome back. A longtime Weyburn volunteer and advocate for people in need is now in need of help himself. Fred Sandusky needs respite care while his wife is in the hospital. Helena Mahalik has more on the financial pressure on seniors.
A Weyburn man is using his story to call for better health care for low-income seniors. 71-year-old Fred Sandusky suffers from chronic pulmonary disease, epilepsy, and a visual impairment. Sandusky says his wife is his daily caregiver. So when she had to get surgery herself, the couple was placed in a tough spot. Sandusky was sent to a special care home in Weyburn for 1 month, but then his wife's hospital stay was extended, and the policy says Sandusky has to pay to continue staying in the care home, $50 a day. He says they can't afford their mortgage and care home costs.
The special care home insisted that I take a long-term bed, which would cost us my pension. And if you take my pension out of the equation of our budget, my wife wouldn't have enough to live on.
The NDP raised the couple's plight at the Legislative Building Wednesday, saying that this is a part of a larger healthcare issue in the province and that the government should be helping the family.
For Fred, we're asking that his hospice care be covered so that he can die with dignity and so that he knows as he's dying that his wife 41 years is not going to become homeless.
When asked about the issue at the legislature Wednesday, Health Minister Jeremy Cockrell said Sandusky's local MLA has been in conversation with the couple and is working to find a solution for the family. Late Thursday afternoon, Sandusky confirmed to CBC that the Ministry of Health is helping him and will allow him to stay in the special care home free of charge for a few more weeks. Sandusky says he hopes this will start a larger conversation about healthcare needs in the province. Helena Mahalik, CBC News, Saskatoon.
Cree language recordings are being heard for the first time in over 50 years. The recordings are now being transcribed by elders from Kwakatu's First Nation. As CBC Indigenous reporter Louise Big Eagle reports, for many, it's bringing back a flood of memories.
It was in 1989 when 78-year-old Senator Bill Strongarm heard these recordings existed, but he just didn't know where. Then, the recordings were found at the Provincial Archives of Alberta in Edmonton. And a few years ago, they were brought home to the Touchwood Agency communities.
Yes, I'm very happy for the opportunity for the children to have something that our old grandfathers and grandmothers left for the legacy for them.
Strongarm has been a senator for the Federation of Sovereign Indian Nations since 2014, but he works in the Language Preservation Department in his community. Now, it's an exciting moment in his life and his culture because he's listening to Cree stories he hasn't heard in a while.
One of them were making reference to the smoke dance, so that's kind of, I would think it's similar to the smoke dance that Iroquois do. Since we all came from the east, so we must have brought that dance along with us. So, yes, we're happy that the recording's there, and we're taking advantage of the opportunity that was given to us. So.
That's my dad. I blurted it out. That's my dad.
77-year-old Caroline Poorman was a Cree teacher who was working on the translations. Her dad is one of those elders speaking in Cree. bringing back memories of that time when she was a young woman.
The smokes, you know, they smoke cigarettes and you can smell the tea when they were drinking tea. That is basically, you know, we had a hard life long ago. It wasn't like not how it is today. And you can smell the wood burning in the stove, in the heater, you know, to keep the warmth going.
Poorman said she was shocked when she first found out they were being stored in archives in Edmonton, but knows this is what her dad intended, to make sure the children learn where they come from.
My dad would feel very, you know, he'd be telling me, "Oh, I'm so proud of you, my girl." Like he'd tell me in Cree, you know, you're finishing what I started.
Poorman says her hopes is to carry on her dad's dream of keeping the Cree language and culture thriving. Louise Big Eagle, CBC News, Punachai.
The weather update is brought to you by Capital GMC Buick Cadillac. Year-end clearance is on now.
A live look of downtown Regina, where it's -2 degrees, a big warm up from this time yesterday. And Riley Lachuk now with a look at your forecast.
Well, Sam, temperatures kind of all over the board, depending on where you were in the province today. -7 through the Parkland region, Broadview, Yorkton, into the Kenora region. -2 in Saskatoon this afternoon, Regina getting to -3, and then some warmer air to the west into that southwest corner of the province. Maple Creek at +5. Compare that to -14 in Collins Bay. So yes, kind of all over the board through the day. Today we're looking at some warmer air as we get into the next several days. Mix of sun and clouds really across the province today. And as I mentioned, things are changing a little bit here as we get into the next couple of days, with an Alberta Clipper on the way and a little bit more precipitation. So through the evening into the overnight period tonight, our skies remaining partly cloudy. Chance as we get into the early morning that we could see that risk of freezing rain through central parts of the province, Saskatoon, even as far south as Regina, maybe as far to the east as Moosomin. This all part of an area of low pressure that'll skirt across northern Saskatchewan as we get through the day on Friday, bringing some snow. And again, the chance of some showers even as we get through essential parts through later Friday. That moves off into Manitoba. Behind that, we see clearing sky once again. So we start Saturday under mainly sunny sky with some cloud building in. And then we get the beginnings of an area of low pressure, an Alberta Clipper that'll skirt across the province, bringing some accumulating snow later Saturday and into Sunday. In terms of snowfall accumulations, really that northwest, that northeastern corner of the province, looking at a general 5 to 10 centimeters. Again, the risk of some flurries even as far south as Prince Albert, with the risk of some freezing rain. What I want to talk about, though, is the ingredients that will be there through the overnight hours into the early morning for some fog patches. Doesn't mean it's going to be foggy everywhere, but certainly we are looking at the risk of some fog as we get into the early part of Friday morning. You can see by 3 o'clock in the morning, North Battleford, Saskatoon, visibility projected to be at 200 meters. Again, some fog patches, possibly even some dense fog patches as we get into the early morning hours. So again, just keep that in mind. If you're on the roads early in the morning tomorrow, even into the morning commute, we could see some of those fog patches rolling through southern and central parts of the province. Up to +1 tomorrow in Regina. We keep temperatures above zero as we get through Saturday into Sunday. I do have 2 to 4 centimeters of snow, but again, some of this could be falling as rain as we see temperatures above the freezing mark potentially through the afternoon hours on Sunday. Then we dip back closer to seasonal, a few flurries lingering into Monday morning at -6. And then a surge of cold Arctic air moves through a ridge building in the jet stream. Temperatures falling back to -10s, -15s by midweek. For Saskatoon, above zero, 2 degrees for Friday and Saturday, 5 to 10 centimeters of snow potentially into Sunday. A few flurries maybe into Monday, but we get some sunny breaks in the afternoon. And then, Sam, we're looking at temperatures into central parts of the province as well, returning to colder than normal by mid next week.
All right. Thanks, Riley. Santa has a lot of upcoming appearances, but he's making an exceptionally big splash in Budapest. And he's wearing goggles precisely because he's making a big splash at an aquarium. And that glove, well, it's for feeding the sharks. And once dinner's been served, Santa takes a swim, gliding through Christmas decor and onto the Shark Tank floor. We'll be back. If this was Jeopardy, answer is 3 people from Regina got to play on the first episode of this new show on Prime Video. The question would be, what is Pop Culture Jeopardy? We caught up with 2 of the Queen City kids who actually won.
When we finally got the email with a flight itinerary saying you're going to Los Angeles, we were buzzing. It was wild that they chose 3 Queen City kids from Regina to represent Canada on a show like this and compete against some heavyweights in the Jeopardy alumni, as well as some really, really smart cookies that really take pop culture very seriously.
You get that buzzer in your hand and you're like, let's see what happens. You definitely end up being a little bit more nervous than you think, but honestly, it was me reminding us that just like in practice, we're just on our couch, just have fun. Let's just see how this goes.
Spoiler alert, the Queen City kids have an epic comeback to take the first crown of Pop Culture Jeopardy. So very exciting, and we're moving on to the quarterfinals.
The episode was described as a roller coaster, so I would recommend you still see it.
That validation that we can compete, that Saskatchewan is going to show up in the quarterfinals of this very exciting new format, meant the world to us. And that's why you're seeing us just absolutely so honored and ecstatic that this dream came true for us.
Well, as I mentioned earlier, watch out for the potential through south and central tonight of some fog patches overnight into the early morning hours. Temperatures dipping to what usually would be daytime highs for this time of the year. -6 in Saskatoon through Outlook, -7 overnight in Regina, Yorkton, Moosomin into the Broadview area, looking at -8s through the overnight period. Tonight, La Ronge -9. We see that light snow, best chance for some snow developing overnight into this northeastern corner of the province, again to the tune of 5 to 10 centimeters as we get through the day on Friday by the time we get to this time on Saturday. So that system passes through with more of that developing behind that, an area of low pressure. And look at some of these temperatures as we get into the afternoon. La Loche even getting above 0, so some of this could be falling as freezing rain or even some showers through the afternoon hours on Friday. For southern sections, we start sunny, a little bit of cloud through the Parkland region, but we stay sunny throughout the day on Friday. And Sam, we're looking at some snow into the weekend and some colder temperatures into next week.
All right. Well, that is it for us tonight. For more news anytime, head to cbc.ca/Sask. You can subscribe to the CBC Saskatchewan YouTube channel or download the CBC News app on your smartphone or tablet. Thanks so much for watching. Have a great night.